कालाभ्राभां कटाक्षैर् अरिकुलभयदां मौलिभद्रेन्दुरेखां शङ्खं चक्रं कृपाणं त्रिशकम् अपि करैर् उद्वहन्तीं त्रिनेत्रां सिंहस्कन्दादिरूढां त्रिभुवनम् अखिलं तेजसा पूरयन्तीं ध्याये दुर्गां जयाख्यां त्रिदश परिवृतां सेवितां सिद्धिकामहे। ॐ ह्रीं दुर्गे दुर्गे रक्षिणी स्वाहा। ॐ जय दुर्गायै नमः। One should meditate on Durga, who is called Jaya, the victorious one. She is radiant like a dark storm cloud. She casts a sidelong glance at the group of foes, thus terrifying them. She has a crescent moon tucked into her crown. While holding a conch, discus, sword, and trident in her hands, she is three-eyed, riding on the shoulders of a lion, filling the three worlds with her energy and brilliance. She is surrounded by the 33 gods. She is worshipped by all those heroes desiring perfection and pleasure. Om Sarva Mangala Mangalye Shive Sarvartha Sadhike Sharanye Triambake Gauri Narayani Namostute Shishti Stithi Vinashanam Shakti Bhute Sanatani Gunashraye Gunamaye Narayani Namostute Sharanagata Dinarta Paritrana Parayane Sarvasyarti Hare Devi Narayani Namostute Jaya Narayani Namostute. Om Shanti 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 Katyayani Devi ki jai. Jai Ma. Jai Ma. Katyayani Devi ki jai. Good evening, one and all. Today is the 6th day of Navaratri. So I thought we should do something special. I thought we should have a Navaratri themed puja class. But still, we're going to discuss the puja series that we've been, discussing for quite some time now. We'll stick to the sequence. So we're not really going to skip around too much today. I'd like to look at the nyasas and then transition into the next section of the puja, which is puja proper, I guess you could say. The worship of the deities as we understand them. Durga, Shiva, Kālī, etc. But first, hello, good evening, Lala, Jaima, Jaima, Jaima. Natalie, back home safely in Vegas. So happy to see you. First on this side of the screen, now on that side of the screen. Jaima, Jaima, Jaima. Brandon G, Jaima, congratulations on your first puja the other day. And now Natalie Ma also has a new Kālī, blessed at the Kālī Mandir. Ma has come back also into her house. So, Viranatha Ji, Jaima. I'm so excited because I've been seeing recently that many people have been starting to get their toes wet a little bit with regards to puja. So those who have never done puja before, many are making their first forays into this very exciting world of puja. And it's very interesting because for the first time, probably in human history, there's more access to this world than ever before. So the materials are available just today. Jessica Ma, I think, she received in her mail a puja parati, the simple Kali Puja from Swami Bhajanananda, and she was quite elated, as she should be. It's a very secret document, a very secret tradition, which is now through the grace of Divine Mother being made possible, being made available to one and all. So it's very exciting. Ruth Ma, Jaima, Satya Moses Ji, Jaima, Scott Ji, Jaima, Jai Sai, Jaima. Happy Durga Puja, one and all. So Durga Puja is a very elaborate puja. In fact, there are many, as you know, different kinds of puja. Durga Puja specifically is incredibly intense. It's perhaps one of the most sophisticated and refined forms of puja, and it's something that happens over the course of like 5 days. So it references the Vedas quite a bit. As you know, you can't really draw a distinction between Tantric and Vedic culture. Many scholars have tried. So they'll say, oh, well, these things are distinctly Tantric. So the use of certain bija mantras, those are tantric in nature. The use of certain yantras, and of course, even the anthropomorphic forms of the gods and goddesses that we interact with now, those are of course Puranic or Tantric. So back in the Vedic period, Ganesh didn't have an elephant head. That's an interesting thing to think about. Ganesh was merely an energy, not to say merely an energy, rather, I should say Ganesh is a formless potential. He's a power, and he's invoked by mantras like in the Yajur Veda, for instance. Yajur Veda is very important for us Tantrics and for us Shaivas. And again, another point here, the Tantric Shaiva tradition is rooted in the Yajur Veda. The word Yajuhu, Yaju means sacrifice. And so the Yajur Veda is the Veda of sacrifice. The Atharva Veda is like the Veda of magic. It's got a lot of like black magic spells and whatnot. It's a very humanistic Veda. So you would think that Tantra was, if ever there was a candidate for the Vedic roots of the Tantra, you would think it would be the Atharva Veda, the latest, or I should say the most modern of all the Vedas. But in fact, the Yajur Veda has more to do with our tradition than anything, especially given the 5 Shiva mantras. Tat Purushaya Vidmahe Agorebhyo Tagorebhyo, all of those mantras come from the Taittiriya Aranyaka in the Yajur Veda. And more importantly, the system of fives, 5 heads for Lord Shiva, 5 powers for Lord Shiva, 5 actions of Lord Shiva, all these sets of 5, which we see pervasively in our Padati, the 5 item offering, the 5 Arati items, the Panchamrita, all of those sets of 5s perhaps can be traced back to those Pashupatas who were basing their tradition on the Taittiriya Aranyaka of the Yajur Veda. So the Vedic world is of course very relevant to us Tantrikas, and the Tantras of course influence the Vedas influence the Tantras. But in the Vedic world, arguably prior to the Puranas, before the anthropomorphic forms of gods and goddesses, prior to the Tantras with all of their mantras and yantras and their updated Kali Yuga specific techniques, prior to all of that, there was this profound ritual. It was called the Aśvamedha. Has anybody heard of this? Aśvamedha Yajña? You know this word? Ah, Satya Moses knows. So Ashwa means horse. So Aśvamedha is the horse sacrifice. Yajna means sacrifice. So exactly, Satya Moses, right? It's the horse sacrifice ritual. Now, remember, you know how in Lord of the Rings, we're like, this is Rohan, the realm of the horse lords. In a sense, I sometimes think with one broad sweep of his hand, Aragorn or Legolas, whoever it is who makes that statement, is pointing to the Vedic civilization. It's the realm of the horse lords. You know, they are nomadic, cattle-oriented communities, and their cattle, of course, included cows, but also, of course, included horses. And horses are very important to this tradition. And so the sacrifice of the horse, necessarily then, it's quite a significant sacrifice and very, very difficult to perform. And it conveys and confers the highest merit upon the performer of the sacrifice. It's very expensive. So you have to be like a king to be able to afford the sacrifice. You have to be able to pay off so many Brahmins, so many ritual officiants. You know, you have to feed them and give them some dakshina, some kind of donation. And many, many, many Brahmins, many Brahmanas, meaning ritual officiates, many of them are required. And there's so much mathematics involved to trace all the geometric patterns for the Homa Kunda, for the Yagya pit, you know, the pit where the fire is placed. And there's so much knowledge that is required to perform the sacrifice. So you need the blessing of Saraswati. That is to say, you need knowledge, a lot of knowledge to be able to know what the right mantras are and what the right sequence is. Everything must be done with precision. If even one detail is off, the sacrifice will be ruined or wasted. The worst case scenario, you get a backlash, a reaction from it. But probably the worst case scenario isn't even quite as bad as that. It's just a waste. It's a waste of 5 days of time. It's a waste of all of these resources, all of these horses. And for what? No outcome, you see. So people take it very seriously. They want to make sure they do it correctly so they get the desired result. And what is the result? It's usually something quite worldly. A person who completes the Aśvamedha sacrifice gains like dominion over the lands, for instance. So kings like to perform this because if a king can successfully do the Aśvamedha, then that king will probably have a reign that is long and prosperous. So we find in the Mahabharata, this Aśvamedha is referenced quite a bit. Yudhishthira performs it, I believe. Right? Yudhishthira is preparing to perform it. And so he's one of the great kings of the Mahabharata who patronizes, this kind of sacrifice. Yes, after the war, King Yudhishthira does the Aśvamedha sacrifice. So it's something that kings do. That you have to keep that in mind. It's so expensive, it requires so many brahmanas, and it's so sophisticated, so refined, and so difficult that it's really only kings who can afford to host something like this. So the king will pay off the brahmanas, the king will provide the horses and the elephants and whatnot, the king will provide all the materials, and therefore the king might themselves not do the mantras, the brahmanas are doing the mantras, but the king is there as the host of the yajna with the king's wife. So both of them must be present. That's why Rama ran into a bit of trouble, because Sita was exiled and Rama technically was not allowed to perform these Vedic sacrifices without his wife next to him. That's another important point. In the Vedic world, the household was very important, and these are traditions oriented around the householder. So for the proper fulfillment of the rite. And you'll see this a lot in the Shaiva Siddhanta tradition too. So in initiation, sometimes in more traditional forms of Diksha, the initiants gather in a room, and the initiating guru, his wife must be there. Typically, it's the man who will do it in the Shaiva Siddhanta world, in the orthodox kind of right-hand path of Tantra. The man will initiate the woman, but, the man will initiate the people, the chelas, the disciples, but his wife must be there, presiding as Shakti. And in the more left-hand versions of this tradition, the wife is worshipped and the wife becomes the central deity. She's the presiding deity and she's the one who provides the Shakti for the mantra, though it's still probably the guru who whispers the mantra into the ear. She's the deity who is witnessing that act, you know. And sometimes I think, just as an aside, but I think about that debate that Shankara had with Mandana Mishra. You know, it's a very important debate in Indian history. Shankara breaks into Mandana Mishra's house, jumps over the fence, if you will, and engages Mandana Mishra in a debate. And who is the judge of that debate? It's a very interesting idea, but Mandana Mishra's own wife was installed as the judge. And funnily enough, she gave the win to Shankara, which meant her husband was going to become a monk and like leave everything behind and become Shankara's disciple. So it's no small thing for her to like give the victory to Shankara. But anyway, as she was the judge, she was also the presiding deity. So legendarily, they say she's an incarnation of Lakshmi or Sarada, Saraswati that is. So that she's an incarnation of Shakti. But I think this is the legend. I think, in fact, and this is just a conjecture, the reason why this legend exists is because, in fact, the debate itself would have been highly ritualistic. So Mandana Mishra, being a Vedic householder, in order to debate Shankara, there are certain rules and procedures that have to be followed, meaning certain rituals that have to be performed in order to have a debate. And maybe, dare I say it, part of that ritual is the installment of the wife as the presiding deity. So that's why she was able to play the role as judge. And that's why perhaps she was able to play the role so impartially as she did. Because in that moment, she was imbibing the quality of Sarada Devi, and she was able to then make the right call, if you will, in that debate. So similarly, in the tantric world, in the Shaiva Siddhanta world, the person who's giving you mantras or who's performing an abhisheka, a ritual consecration, that person is perhaps only allowed to do that if their wife is present. Isn't that an interesting idea? So it's only a householder, arguably, who can perform the duties of Shaiva Siddhanta. And it's only a householder, arguably, who can, and this is very much stressed in the Vedic world, who can do things like the Aśvamedha sacrifice, the yajna, the supreme yajna of the Vedic world. So you're Rama, and your wife just got exiled. What do? You can't perform these sacrifices. But you need to, because they're important for the upkeep of your kingdom and your prosperity and the well-being of your people. So Rama famously had a golden Sita made. It's a bit legalistic. He found a workaround. So he's like, oh, she's there. After all, you only all say she's Kanchanabham, you know, she's shining like gold and whatnot. So here she is, golden Sita. Anyway, so but that story, it emphasizes, I think, an important point that a person who's performing this ritual, whatever Vedic ritual is considered here, whatever kratu or whatever yagya, has to do it as part of a household. That's one thing to note. And they often do it as part of the state. So the whole state, the whole kingdom is involved. So the second thing to consider here is that this ritual requires not only knowledge, it requires also a lot of money. The Aśvamedha sacrifice is very expensive because horses are very expensive. So you can see then the quality of the sacrifice corresponds to the ambition of the sacrifice. The more you want to get out of this ritual, the more you have to put into it. This is true of like everything in life also. Like what we put in often is what we get out. And the more that we put in, the more that we get out. It's true of our studies, it's true of our relationships, it's true of almost everything. And to your question, Ruth, this Aśvamedha probably would have happened out in a field somewhere. But it's possible that the king would have had a courtyard for this. So it could have been roofed, you know, and there could have been a homa pit in the center of that courtyard, but it would have been a huge courtyard and kind of like an outdoor affair, arguably. You know, and there might have been many fires. So it's almost impossible to recreate this because the tradition is, you know, it's changed so much over the years. It's been tantricized so much. Not to say that that's like, you know, different that much, but Again, the Aśvamedha, nobody really knows. I think maybe some scholars might, but no one really knows how it was actually performed back then. But here's what we do know though. It took a lot of knowledge. It required many, many, many brahmanas, meaning many ritual specialists. It took a lot of money. It required a lot of sacrifices, horses, and a lot of like ghee and all that. And thirdly, it took a village. That's another thing to remember, that the whole community was involved, not just the Brahmanas. See, the Brahmanas, of course, were doing, but also the Vaishyas, they had to trade. This is a very important time for the Vaishyas because their trade made sure that the appropriate substances came in for the rituals. You had to somehow import the ghee. You'd maybe have to purchase some horses from a neighboring kingdom. So the Vaishyas, the merchants of the civilization, were very busy at this time. The Shudras were incredibly busy because perhaps people would come from all over. Usually, the officiating king, the one who's sponsoring the yagya, will invite other kings who he's interested in making alliances with, and they'll all come into the kingdom. So that means the Shudras are very busy constructing houses for all the king's men and all the king's horses to come and live in. So Shudras are busy plying their trade, and of course the Kshatriyas, they're incredibly busy because they're managing this whole thing. So Brahmana, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, the whole society, everyone is involved. Everyone has a role. All the women, all the men, all the children, arguably all the animals. So many roles are there, and these roles are fulfilled by so many different people from all walks of life and all stations of society. So it takes a village. It's a big production, to say the least. So the Aśvamedha sacrifice requires a lot of knowledge, requires a lot of money, and it takes a village. It takes a kingdom, actually. It's a huge production. Okay, but arguably, it's the Vedic ritual par excellence. It's very, very powerful. And usually it's applied in the worldly sense, but think about it also in the spiritual sense. If applied spiritually, one can attain the very highest in spiritual life, bhakti, jnana, vairagya, like that. So rituals are powerful. I mean, if you didn't consent to that fact, you wouldn't be in this class. Rituals are powerful, rituals work. So I'm really preaching. I can't say I'm preaching to the choir, I'm preaching to the ritualists. So, given that, this is arguably in the Vedic world the strongest ritual, the most powerful ritual. It's called the Aśvamedha sacrifice. Okay, why are we bringing all of this up? Because the thing you have to know is that the Durgā Pūjā is the modern day Aśvamedha sacrifice. So they say it's equivalent. Performing a Durgā Puja successfully, they say, is equivalent to the Aśvamedha sacrifice. Isn't that a really interesting idea that like maybe it's impossible to do the Aśvamedha? After all, who has horses to sacrifice? I don't know, maybe you do, but I think it might be undesirable to go and sacrifice some horses. And also, we don't know how to actually recreate the Aśvamedha sacrifice. We don't know the Vedic mantras really, vidhihinam, kriyahinam, mantra-hinam, yadarchitam. That's especially true of this case. Like, we're not just being humble, oh my, I don't know the mantras. No, I really don't know the mantras. Like, they're there in the Yajurveda and whatnot, but we don't know how to perform this ritual because a lot is not there in the Vedas. Many, many portions of the Vedas were lost, by the way. These are oral traditions that many of them actually died out. It's very hard to understand how to do the Aśvamedha sacrifice, and it's so powerful that you might be interested in doing one. Um, oh, interesting. Satya Moses is saying there was also purportedly some very odd interaction between the queen and the recently sacrificed horse. Interesting. Ah ha ha ha. That's very good point. So, but there's a lot going on there, as Satya Moses Ji is implying. There's like a lot going on in the Aśvamedha sacrifice. Maybe later he can tell us a little bit more about that in his own research like that. But you'll notice that there are controversies around it. It's hard to understand what it is about actually. And when you look at the Vedas and try to translate the Sanskrit, remember this is Vedic Sanskrit. It's very different from the Sanskrit that many of you are studying. It's older and it sounds different. And the dhatus, the roots, they're like in Greek. Modern Greek versus Attic Greek, like the word meno, there's a word. It means weight in one version in the modern Greek, but it means life in the old Greek. So what's the relationship between waiting and life? Like maybe not that much, but the same word is used in a different context. It could be like that, where in Vedic Sanskrit versus in modern Sanskrit, post Panini and whatnot, you have differences, you see. So it's kind of hard to know exactly what they're saying. So you can't recreate. Probably you'll never be able to recreate in this modern day the Aśvamedha sacrifice. But that's okay, because remember, the purpose of the Tantra is to make available to us in the Kālī Yuga what was available to our ancestors in the Satya Yuga, in the glory days of the Vedic period. So in a sense, Tantra is a kind of Vedic revivalist movement. In a sense, it's a Karma Kanda revivalist movement. That isn't to say there are forms of Tantra that transgress the Vedas quite a bit and seem to be a sort of post-Vedic, dare I say, non-Vedic tradition in some cases. But for the most part, I think Tantra, by and large, is a sort of karma kanda, meaning a ritual revival of the Vedas. But it makes this concession: you can't practice the Vedas the way the Vedas were practiced back then. Sri Ramakrishna constantly makes this point throughout the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. In the Katamrita, you'll see he kind of criticizes Ishan a bit. He says, "Why is he doing all these Vedic rituals? These rituals, which were okay for the Satya Yuga, are not appropriate for this Kali Yuga, when people depend so much on food and when people are so body conscious." So Sri Ramakrishna also consistently throughout the Katamrita makes this kind of claim that you find also in the Tantras, that what we have to do now in this Kali Yuga is more tantric in nature. We have to follow the agamas, we have to follow the Tantras, the revelation of Lord Shiva, specifically for us. Now, one thing that the Tantras tell us though is that the Aśvamedha sacrifice is commensurate to the Durgā Pūjā. So Durgā Pūjā is the modern Aśvamedha. If you perform the Durgā Pūjā, you have performed the Aśvamedha. Isn't that remarkable? And unsurprisingly, the Durga Puja, like the Aśvamedha, is very difficult. And it's open only to householders. Like monastics cannot perform the Durga Puja. And in fact, they probably, even if they wanted to, wouldn't be able to. Because like I said, the Aśvamedha is kind of expensive. So too is the Durga Puja, quite costly. The Aśvamedha requires a lot of knowledge. So too does the Puja require a lot of scriptural understanding. And you could say you need Saraswati, you need Lakshmi, you need knowledge, you need money, but you also need Ganesh. You need a lot of luck and a lot of obstacle clearing to be able to get this show on the road, if you will, to be able to put this production together. So that's why Lakshmi, Saraswati, Ganesh, the blessing of these three, very important. And you'll need one fourth component also, energy. You'll need power. So you'll need Muruga, Skanda. So you can say these four deities that adorn the pandal in the Bengali version of Durga Puja, they represent these qualities that you need to have first in order to be able to do Durga Puja. Lots of knowledge, arguably lots of money or resources, Ganesh to clear all obstacles, and Muruga or Skanda to give you the energy to follow through with this elaborate 5 day ritual. So it's a ritual that happens over the course of 5 days. So this isn't a 5 hour puja. Even that can be kind of long for some of us. It's not a 50-minute puja, 5 minute puja. It's literally a 5 day puja. Arguably, the Aśvamedha might have been weeks long. Who knows? It could have just gone on for days after days after days. So the Durga Puja is like that too. It typically happens towards the end of the 9 nights. So it's 5 days, so it starts on like the last 5 days. So of the 9 nights, it's started on Skanda Mata, now it's Katyayani's day, and then it'll be Kālāratri, and then like that. So it's on these last 5 nights that the Durga Puja is done in earnest. And there's a very beautiful moment when Chamunda is worshipped. It's like this 48-minute interval where you have to perform that puja within the 48 minutes. You can't be a minute too late or a minute too early. So there's like a lot of precision required in that specific 48 minute. These two dandas, two periods of 24 minutes together, that 48 minutes, that's when mother kills the Mahishasura. They say there are many versions of what this means, but it's when Chamunda kills Chanda and Munda. But this moment is when the demon is slain. There's like a specific demon slaying moment. And so in that moment, you have to really do a particularly important ritual in a very precise way. You have to be really, really, really precise. So there's that moment. So this whole 5 day period, it's called Durga Puja. And um, you often do it together with your household and maybe with your community. So everyone in society is involved. The Shudra, the craftsperson, is involved in sculpting the clay image. So these clay images are sculpted, and there are specifications as to how to sculpt the image also. So you have to get soil from certain places, all around the town. Like you have to get soil from like a prostitute's house. So in front of a prostitute's house, you have to get soil, and that soil must be used in the sculpting of the clay image. Isn't that so beautiful? And the idea here is that the clay image is made of the ancestors, and it's made of the energy of the whole of society. That's a nice idea also. So you have this clay image, which is made of the earth, and then on Mahalaya Day, which is the new moon right before Durga Puja, the eyes are put on. So by lamplight, the artisan will put the eyes on Ma. So Mahalaya is important because that's when Ma opens her eyes, and then the image is brought into the home maybe, or it's brought into the community. So these images, Durga, these images are commissioned. Big images of Durga. It could be small, they could be big, or it could be paintings or something. So they're commissioned, and they're each year commissioned and brought into the household. Then on the pandal, meaning like on the stage, is going to be Durga. She'll probably be killing Mahishasura. And then to one side, there's going to be Lakshmi. To another side, there's going to be Saraswati. So it's Durga, Lakshmi, Saraswati. Then probably you're also going to see Ganesh, and you're also going to see Kartikeya. Kartikeya meaning Skanda, meaning Muruga. So there's like, how many? Durga, Saraswati, Lakshmi, Ganesh, Muruga, Mahishasura. So there are like 6 people on the stage, and they're all of them worshipped as part of Durga Puja, you see. And if you go to Bengal, you'll see that on the pandals there'll be pictures of Ramakrishna and Sarada Devi, pictures of Vamakepa, like that. So these are the six main figures in Durga Puja, but the gurus and the lineages also will all be represented. So that's the altar. So first Durga is made by Shudras, and of course you have to have money to be able to commission that image. It's a place in Kolkata called Kumartoli where a lot of these images are made. So the artisans live on that street, Kumartoli, and then you pay money and then you commission and you get the sculpture. By the way, this sculpture is going to be immersed. So that's always a very sad day because after 5 days of worshipping this Durga, she's come to life. Maybe you even saw her blink, you feel her breathe, she's there. And then you know what you have to do? It's crazy. At the end of this puja, you take this Durga, which you've been worshipping so lovingly over the course of the festival, and you take it to the river and you immerse it. It's a beautiful ceremony, actually, to watch everyone. It's very ecstatic. People start dancing and whatnot. It's very beautiful in Bengal. It's where the Durga Puja is quite prominent. This culture of worshipping Durga in these 5 days. So then Durga is immersed, put in the water. People cry and jump in the water after her and whatnot. It's a very beautiful thing. So anyway, to commission the Durga, you need some money, and then to get all the various things, you need like soil from this place, a pot from that place. This kind of you have to gather a lot of things. You'll have to get some kind of plants, specific kind of plants like that. So it's like an items collection quest. From a video game point of view, like the items collection is like off the charts. You have to get so many items, meaning you have to be kind of well connected also. You have to be engaged with society to be able to know where to go to get these things. So that's why it takes a whole village. So you have to be a person of resources and also a person of influence. That's why you can see a sannyasin, a wandering mendicant, is probably, first of all, not allowed to do Durga Puja by the rules of the Tantras, but also probably even if they wanted to, they couldn't. They're probably not as well connected as a householder. They're not part of society. They're mendicants. They wander about on the margins and fringes of society. And that's first of all. But second of all, they probably don't have the money. They're living a day-to-day begging bowl to begging bowl existence, if you will. How could they be expected and required to put together all of these resources to purchase all of these things? It's just not appropriate. So I think to make it easier on monks, they're freed of this responsibility. They don't have to do Durga Puja, and they're prohibited from doing Durga Puja. Only householders can perform it. And you'll see in Bellarmat, it's very interesting. They do Durga Puja in Bellarmat because Durga herself told Swamiji and Swami Brahmananda in two separate visions to do it. And they corroborated that vision. Swamiji was coming across the river to Belur, and then when he got to this side of the bank, he said to Swami Brahmananda, I just saw Durga walk into Belur. And then Swami Brahmananda said, I also saw Durga. And so from that vision, Swami Vivekananda and Swami Brahmananda, the two Swamis, decided to start Durga Puja at Belur, which is kind of controversial because that's something that only householders do. But you'll notice if you watch the Belur live stream for Durga Puja, you'll notice the monk who is doing the mantras won't be doing the offerings. He'll just be reading the mantras out. The person who is actually performing the offerings is a brahmachari who's not yet a sannyasin, you see. Or a novice. That's how they work around it. So I think the novice monk does it, but the monk says the mantras. So I'm not saying that monks don't perform it. Of course they do, but by the tantras, by the agamas, like it's something that a householder only can and should do. So Durga Puja, it's a householder-oriented ritual, and arguably almost all rituals are like this. They're oriented around householders. Of course, monastics do rituals, but generally the puja culture, the ritual culture of tantra, it's made by householders for householders, which of course references the Vedic tradition, where it's very much familial community kind of event. Okay, so that's Durga Puja. Now, it of course, because it references the Aśvamedha sacrifice, it therefore is very meritorious. When you do a Durga Puja, you can attain quite a lot of things. From a worldly point of view, after all, the Aśvamedha gave kings dominion over the kingdom, prosperity, longevity. So when we as householders perform the Durga Puja, we can get all of those things also. But arguably, one's real interest is to get spiritual outcomes, perhaps. Bhakti, jnana, vairagya, devotion, knowledge, renunciation. Both are perfectly legit. As we see in the Chandi, Surata just wanted his kingdom back. He just wanted to be a king. And Durga made him king of the universe, of the Manvantara. He became a Manu. And then Samadhi, true to his name, wanted to be in bliss and wanted to be in Samadhi. And so Mother gave him that, proving that both Bhoga and Yoga are both valid things to ask Ma for, as you'll see in the Dhyana mantra in a few moments. So that being said, you can do Durgā Pūjā like the kings of old did Aśvamedha for material prosperity. That's one of the reasons why householders do it, and it's one of the reasons why the whole community comes together to do it, because it's good for the community. It makes sure the crops will grow and that the community is safe from attack and there are no floods or famine, that the weather is good. It ensures that people are nice with one another and that the communal life is healthy and energized. And most importantly, it ensures the presence of the Divine Mother in this place. When I was visiting some villages in Bengal, like in the Birbhum district, you could really feel, the energy of Durga Puja. I didn't even go during Durga Puja season. I came after, quite a few months after Durga Puja. But when I was there, for the first time, you could palpably feel Mother. In fact, you could see remnants of Durga Puja all over. Clay images in the river kind of resurfacing, or like pandals kind of resting, waiting for next year's puja. And you could really feel that Ma is walking about these fields. So to feel the living presence of the divine, which is always energizing and enlivening, Durga Puja is performed. And if you do Durga Puja, usually you'll really get a result out of it. If you're doing it properly in the household, you'll feel the divine. So it's a wonderful thing, and it's wonderful to do. Very difficult to do though. So, having said all of that, when we study texts like the Kulārnava Tantra, you'll notice that there are ways to substitute. So in the Kulārnava Tantra, we're told about the Purasharana, and the Purasharana is Panchanga Purasharana. There are 5 limbs to the Purasharana. There's the charity aspect, which is the feeding of brahmanas, feeding of holy people, and that you see with Vedic sacrifice is very important. After you do the homa, you have to give dakshina, usually some kind of uncooked rice or some kind of bananas, plantains or something, some food. You have to give them food and you have to give them money. So you have to pay your brahmanas. So there's got to be some kind of charity, some kind of goodwill. So the Purasharana requires that too. Then the Purasharana requires homa, fire sacrifice. Then it requires tarpana, water libations. Then it requires puja, ritual worship. And then it requires japa, the recitation of a particular mantra. So these 5 things make a Purasharana, according to Lord Shiva in the Kulārnava Tantra. But we saw in the Kulārnava Tantra, remember we studied it some time ago, at least just that section on the Purasharana, that chapter 15 or whatever it was. We just studied that specific chapter, and you saw that Lord Shiva himself said, look, if you can't do the homa, it's okay. You can substitute it with japa. If you can't do the charity, you can substitute it with japa. In fact, you can substitute japa for any one of these things. So instead of doing 5 limbs, you can do 1 limb. And 1 limb is just the recitation of the mantra. But he says you chant 1 lakh mantras for whatever you miss. So to compensate for not doing charity, you chant 100,000 more repetitions than you normally would. So if you commit to chanting 100,000 repetitions over the course of like 10 days or something, if you're doing like that kind of purasharana, but you don't want to do all the homas and pujas and all the other external, I don't want to say external because they're all part of the same thing, but all the other things, if you don't want to do that, well and good, just do more mantra. So it seems like in the Kulārnava Tantra, there's this idea that mantra itself can be a substitute for the other things in puja. And we also find in the Kulārnava Tantra this idea of like hierarchies, where Bahir Puja, external worship is good, but even better is Manasa Puja, mental worship. I mean, of course, you can't really access these higher levels until you master the first steps. So Bahir Puja is sort of like an intro to the world of worship, external worship. And when you get good at that, you're able to access mental worship. But it seems like mental worship is a bit deeper. It's a bit higher. And then if you can do mental worship well, you'll be able to do japa well, repetition of a mantra. And if you can do japa well, you'll be able to have samadhi. Samadhi is the best. In fact, a while ago, I was preparing for some kind of my version of a Durga Puja, kind of abbreviated Durga Puja. And I was asking my guru, like, okay, any instructions for me? How can I perform Durga Puja? How can I best worship Ma? And he said most profoundly that if you really want to worship Ma, make the worshipping, the worshipper, and the worshipped one. So, meaning samadhi. That's the real way to worship God, is to become God, to dissolve the difference between me and God. Samadhi is the highest form of worship, according to the Kulārnava Tantra also. And Bahir Puja is not the lowest, like I was saying. The bottom of the list is not necessarily the least. Rather, it's the most foundational. So from Bahir to Manasa to Japa to Samadhi, you get that hierarchy. So using that idea, you can see how Japa is very powerful. The repetition of a mantra goes a long way. And it can be used as a substitute, in fact, for parts of the ritual that you might not feel inclined to perform, or you might not logistically be able to perform. So I know that one day we're going to sit down and study Durga Puja together. Like one day we're going to look at all the things. Let me just give you a preview. One of the first things that you do in Durga Puja is you establish the Ghata. It's called Ghata Sthapana, which is the establishing of mother in a pot of water. Now, that requires many, many, many Vedic mantras. In fact, when we do Kālī Puja, we also do that. We do a Ghata Sthapana. So if you look at your padatis, you'll see in the beginning there is that ritual of establishing the Ghata, and most of the mantras, if not all of them, I think, are from the Vedas. It'll say Rik Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, like it'll tell you which of the Vedas those mantras are from. But you chant many, many, many Vedic mantras. So the beginning of Durga Puja, and Swami Bhajan Ananda Saraswati was recently making this point too. Natalie was there at the Kali Mandir. He was giving a talk, and he also made this point, I think, in that class, that in the beginning of Durga Puja, you start with Vedic mantras. But you know what's really great? At the end of Durga Puja, when you're taking the gata, the pot which you installed in the beginning, when you're taking it to the river to immerse it, you're supposed to, I kid you not, in the Agamas it's specified, you're supposed to make loud, rude, dirty, inappropriate jokes. You're supposed to cuss. You should curse aloud. You should be inappropriate out in public. And that's very interesting. The whole spectrum of human life is captured. Remember, you're getting clay from the prostitute's house also. And the clay represents like your ancestors, all the earthy parts of your being, your samskaras. So Durga Puja itself captures the very highest, which is Vedic ritualism, the sophistication of Vedic knowledge, and quote unquote, the very lowest. And that's why people love Shakespeare. Because when they read Shakespeare, they find like fart jokes next to sublime poetry about love and loss and time and God. So when they read Shakespeare, they're like, look, this is a genius. This is a genius because he's able or she's able or they're able, whoever Shakespeare is, they're able, she's able, he's able to capture so much of life, the full spectrum of life. Similarly, Durga Puja captures the full spectrum and it takes a whole village. So if one day we studied Durga Puja, that would be wonderful. But if you feel inspired to do Durga Puja, what we usually learn in our tradition is that instead of doing Durga Puja, remember, Durga Puja itself is commensurate to one Aśvamedha. So having performed the Durga Puja is like having performed the Aśvamedha. And you can do it with a sankalpa. I'm doing this puja ma to bring peace to this particular part of the world. Or I'm doing this puja to help this particular person who is in need. Or I'm doing this puja because I need more money. Or I'm doing this puja because I want to be healthy. All these things are fine. But also we usually recommend to do the puja for spiritual outcomes. Like I want bhakti, jnana, vairagya. May all the sannyasins in the world, may all the sannyasinis increase in renunciation. May all the devotees increase in bhakti. Usually our sankalpas have that flavor. So we're praying for others, but we're praying for others to be spiritually liberated, to be whole and to be free. But more importantly, we're praying for spiritual qualities. And the best thing is to do it just for its own sake. You see, you can do it for world peace. You can do it for somebody in need. You can do it for yourself and for your family and for your community. But you can also do it for spiritual goals, for yourself, for your family, for your community, for the world. But you can also do it just for fun, just because it pleases Ma. And that's the way I like to do things. And that's the thing, like the Durga Puja always stresses the fact that like everything is valid, like nothing will cheapen the puja because life is beautiful in all of its phases. That's one of the most tantric things about the Durga Puja. That's why you see in the beginning there's the Vedas, in the end there's swear words. The whole spectrum is covered, so all of your desires are valid, and she's your mother after all. Who can you go to ask for allowance if not Durga? And the Durga Puja is one way, arguably, to really get her attention. And usually her grace flows quite strongly, arguably when the puja is performed. Now, I don't want to get into a theological battle here, because we all know that grace cannot be caused. If you could do something to win grace, then it's no longer grace because it's no longer swatantriya. It's no longer free. It's now conditioned. I don't need to get into that debate with you right now. It's just believed, at least, that the Durga Puja is like unfurling the sail, and the winds of grace, which are always blowing, will more readily guide your ship forward if you do Durga Puja, if you do something like this, which is so intense. And just imagine, I mean, on one level, it's just immersing your mind in Ma for 5 days. I mean, just think about it from a manifestation point of view, if you want, even. Like if your vibration increases, and I'm going to use some new age manifestation language here, if your vibration increases, you'll attract into your life positive things. It's inevitable. People, circumstances, money, beauty, like whatever you want, pleasure, life opportunities, whatever you want, they'll be drawn to you like bees to a fragrant flower when your vibration increases. So never try to like make money or try to like get a partner or try to like, don't do these things. Just increase that vibration, so to speak. In other words, work on quote unquote yourself first. But that's the manifestation logic. Until you feel abundant, you won't see any abundance in the world around you. So from that point of view, I think if you perform Durga Puja, can you imagine how you'll feel at the end of 5 days of immersing the mind in the most refined poetry and philosophy and liturgy and litany of all time? Like just that that boost that you'd get from this, just in terms of vibe, as my kids at middle school say, like you're really farming aura with this, you know? So you can see, like, even if you don't explicitly ask for money, chances are at the end of Durga Puja, you would have farmed so much aura that when you step out into the street, like you're like Kendrick Lamar or something. You've got the yams, and everybody knows it. Right? And then, you just find you have more life opportunities, you make more money, etc. So, having said that, the Durga Puja, whether or not you have a Sankalpa, will bless your life. It'll bless your life with the presence of the Divine Mother, at least, at the very least. So, okay, again, we're not learning Durga Puja now because it's a very elaborate puja, taking 5 days, requiring a lot of knowledge, money, resources, community. It's something we do together. But here's what we can do. And this is what we usually recommend that we do. So together, usually we perform as a community something like a Durga Puja. So just like it said, one Durga Puja equals one Aśvamedha. In that same way, 100,000 repetitions of the Durga mantra equals one Durga Puja. 1 lakh, so 100,000 repetitions of a mantra. If you do that over the course of Navaratri, over the course of 10 days, you would have finished Durga Puja. Now, some people are quite hardcore. They do this over the course of 5 days. Others do it over the course of 9. Some do it over the course of 10. But for Navaratri, committing to chanting 100,000 repetitions of the mantra or your mantra or a mantra, it is said, in our lineage at least, that that is equivalent to the Durga Puja, which is equivalent to the Aśvamedha. So if you don't have the opportunity to get a ghatta and to get an image and to set up a pandal and to like get your community together and to like actually perform ritualistically the puja, you can instead just commit to chanting a certain number of mantras. But remember, since Durga Puja is something that we do together as a village, so too can we think of mantra-japa in this way. So if the goal is to chant 100,000 mantras, we have to ask ourselves, is that even realistic? That means I'm going to have to chant 100 malas every day. See, 100 malas every day is about 10,000 repetitions. And by the way, we don't count the eights. So I know one mala is 108 beats, right? We just count 100. And why? Because that eight is like insurance. Chances are you're probably going to miscount. And so you just put that eight aside as like insurance for any time you might sell yourself short. So every time you finish a mala, think, I've done 100. Now, if you do 100 malas in a day, you've done 10,000. And if you've done 100 malas every day for 10 days, you've done 100,000. So that's the goal. The goal to perform one full Durga Puja just by using mantra-japa, using the logic of the Kulārnava Tantra that we just went over the other, just a few moments ago. Using that logic, if you do 100,000 repetitions of the mantra, our tradition maintains that that will be equally beneficial as having performed a whole Durga Puja. And many of you can testify to that. It's very powerful to immerse your mind in the mantra. But just like a Durga Puja, you don't have to do it alone. In fact, if it was all just left to you to do a Durga Puja, my God, it would be so hard. You have to go this way, you have to go that way, to collect this, to collect that. So it's best to do a Durga Puja together as a community, no? And so that being said, usually we try to say like, okay, how many mantras can you do realistically? What will your day allow? If you're chanting a simple short mantra like the one we discussed some time ago, maybe it will take you 4 or 5 hours to do 100 malas a day. So can you commit 4 or 5 hours of meditation or mantra repetition? Some people say it only counts if you're sitting down. We in our community don't have such strict rules like that. We say if you're walking around, maybe you're at the gym or something, running on the treadmill, like, and you're doing malas, like that's fine. You just tally up the malas. But can you realistically do 100 malas a day? Maybe not. And maybe you shouldn't like burn yourself out in this way. Perhaps it's wiser to team up with others to say, okay, I realistically can do maybe 10 malas a day. Wonderful. Find 9 other people, and all of you commit to doing 10 malas a day together. And then all of you collectively would have done, at the end of 10 days, if you all stick to your 10 malas a day, you would have done 100,000 malas together. And so as a community, you would have performed one Durga Puja. Just like the kings all got together to do their Aśvamedha, we as a community are all getting together to do our Durga Puja in the form of the repetition of the mantra. Yes. So that's why it's important to me, at least in our community, that our numbers are all anonymous so that it doesn't become like competitive or like, performative. My fear is that this becomes a high demand group where it's like, oh my God, participation is only upon the condition that I can do these many mantras. No, nothing like that. Nothing like that. The point is just to love Ma and enjoy Ma. This is just another way to do it. So for Durga Puja, usually whether it's Chaitra Spring Puja or Sarada Durga Puja, we usually say, here's a mantra, like chant this mantra 100,000 times over the course of 10 days and team up with other people to do it. So what we like to do, like I was saying last week, is we like to just tally it all together. So people will just send me however many mantras they intended to do, and then however many mantras they actually did. And don't beat yourself up, because even if you fall short of your goal, if you fail to reach the stars, you'll land among the clouds, kind of thing. You would have done way more mantras than you normally would anyway. That's something to celebrate, actually. Before you look up and see how far you've fallen, make sure you look down to see how far you've come. That's another wonderful thing, to stay positive and uplifted. But also remember, if you aim to do 100,000 malas and you don't manage to do it, it's okay. Somebody's got you covered. And that's why in our community, we just pool together all the mantras, and our goal is to do at least one Durga Puja together. That is to say, as a community, we try to chant at least 100,000 repetitions together. But usually it ends up being something like 200,000 or 300,000, which is great, which means we've collectively done together as a community about two or three Aśvamedha Yajñas, in a sense, no? And imagine the kind of spiritual benefit that we can generate from that. It would bless the world. It would bless ourselves. Not that we can or should help the world. We should worship God who is the world. But generally, for all the people in the world who are suffering, don't you think a couple hundred people getting together to chant mantras, don't you think that's going to have some positive effect, at least in the collective vibration of the world? So I think that's the way, that's the activism that typically we propose in our community, to raise the vibration by doing things like this together. It's equivalent to how like in churches they pray together, and they're all like together generate energy, and maybe they put their hands out. Like I think in many spiritual traditions, there's this idea of praying for the collective by invoking the presence of God, increasing one's own frequency, and feeling that flowing out to bless the world. In the Buddhist tradition, it's metta, for instance, like that. So this is what we do together in our community. And that's the japa practice, okay, that we're doing. So for Durga Puja, instead of doing the long, elaborate 5-day worship, which requires a lot of resources and money and knowledge, it might just be as simple as repeating a mantra as many times as you can, and deciding like, okay, how many can I do every day? And then sticking to that every day. Okay, so that's one way to do Durga Puja. But now, to close out our discussion this evening, I want to offer some other ways you can ritually approach this practice. So, okay, we have the 100,000 repetitions of the mantra, that's there, you can do that. And or you might like to do a kind of simple puja to Durga. So now I want to walk you through a Durga Puja. But by Durga Puja, now I don't mean the 5-day elaborate Aśvamedha equivalent puja, which I was just talking about for the last like hour or so. Now I mean just a simple 5-item or 10-item worship of the goddess Durga, a simple ritual to connect to that energy called Durga, this warrior goddess who is Kālī, who is Saraswati, who is Lakshmi, who is Para. There's only one Shakti, and now we're going to talk about her in the form of Durga, and we're going to talk a little bit about what that Jagadatri or Durga Puja looks like. So if you don't mind, let's just do now, for the remainder of the time that we have together, Durga Puja. But okay, disclaimer, not in the sense that I just discussed. Okay, that's well outside of the scope of the next 10 minutes or so that I have for this class. So we're not going to talk about that Durga Puja. So this next part will be a bit more relevant for those of us who are just getting started. So those of us who are new to the puja world, this should be quite exciting for you, I think, because I'm going to now suggest from our padati, from our tradition, a very simple puja that you can do to Durga, which is, I think, quite nice for this time of year, for Navaratri. And it'll be very good also for the fall Navaratri. So here's what you need, okay, for the puja. Ideally, when you're worshiping God, anything goes. It's just sincerity. That's all that really matters. So whatever you want to offer, feel free to offer, especially given that this is the Divine Mother. She's going to take any offering that you have to give, and you can do all of this mentally. But ideally, we offer her 5 things. Like I was saying, the number 5 is very special in the tantric tradition. So the 5 things, this is called the Panchopachara Puja, are as follows. The first is some kind of fragrance. So some kind of perfume or sandalwood paste, like we discussed last week. Now, some people even offer sindura, vermilion, in this first offering. So instead of offering perfume, you can offer some vermilion, sindura, which you can purchase online or find at your local Indian grocer. So that's the first item. The second item is a flower. Typically, this flower is smeared with sandalwood paste. And we also last week discussed a lot about the significance of sandalwood paste. You can make your own, or of course, you can, like I tend to do, just purchase it at the local Indian grocer. So you can, this is starting to sound like an ad for the local Indian grocer. Good, it is, because I hope they get more business out of this. Anyway, wherever in the world you are, there are probably Indians there, and there's probably an Indian grocer that's selling my favorite mango pickles and also these puja things. So, and they only sell these like little Durga kits. Oh yeah, can you turn on the, yeah, otherwise inauspicious light needs to come on. Yes. And then that light also, thank you. Yeah. So if you can, yeah, the mango pickles are so good. So, oh, mango pickles digression. Good. God covers the whole spectrum. So if you can purchase some sindura, some sandalwood paste, that'll be good. But in any case, and they even sell these little Durga Pūjā kits, with like 16 item worships, like with a comb and everything like that. So we have this little kit. Okay, but I would just recommend you just get these five things. You get some sindura or some perfume, you get a flower with some sandalwood paste. If you want, maybe the Indian grocer might have this vilva leaves. Mother is very fond of vilva leaves, but also you can go and buy roses and pluck those three petal leaves from many variants of the rose flower. Their leaves look like vilva leaves. It's like a three petal leaf like that. So you can pluck those. That goes with your flower offering. Then get some incense, have a lamp, of course, practicing fire safety. So we'll have a lamp. And see, I joke because some of you were here watching us during Shivaratri, and unfortunately, I was doing Shivaratri and you saw my hair catch on fire. So that's why people often joke. And then there was the Los Angeles fires, but we didn't evacuate. We were still just doing pujas and teaching classes. So Viranatha was like giving me a hard time. He was joking. He's like, practicing fire safety, of course, because I always say it. But no, seriously, practice fire safety. So, you can have a ghee lamp or some kind of candle. Even a candle is perfect, no problem. Or an electric light. My guru sometimes suggests electric lights just because they tend to be safer. And accidents can happen with fire, so you have to be careful. Anyway, then you can offer some food. So some sweets, you know, like there. See, Viranatha is showing. That's a good thing to offer. This kind of wait, let me just show you. There's like a sugar kind of cube. Can you see Viranatha is showing it here? Let me spotlight him for you. Sugar cube. And Natalie Ma gave me a bunch of these. So you gave some to Swami Bhajanananda Ji, and then those that you gave to me, we're offering it to Ma daily. Yeah, so there's that. So that's good. That sugar is a very good offering. It's very easy to offer, but you can get nuts, sweets, fruits, stuff like that. This is called Naivedyam. And just a simple food offering is good. Now, in of course, the left-hand version is not left-hand, but mother is fond of wine, you could say. And in the Chandi, she also drinks wine in her fight with Mahishasura. So if you like, you can give her a cup of water from a more sattvic point of view. But if you like a slightly more rajasic, more Veera Bhava sort of puja, then you can give a little bit of a wine also. Oh, I see. Some. Anyway, so you can give a little bit of wine. So whatever. And then, oh, those are camphor. Actually, those are karpura. Yeah, so you can get a little camphor instead, though they tend to be quite sooty. So our roof is like all black from the camphor. So camphor can be very sooty. Just keep that in mind. So these are the five things you're going to need, okay? Just very simple. You've got some perfume or some sindur, flowers, and or vilva leaves. Then you have incense, you have some kind of fire like a lamp or candle, and you have some food. Okay, so these are the five items that you're going to offer the Divine Mother. The simplest version of this puja is to just light a lamp, feel the divine presence of Mother in that lamp, and then offer these things to the lamp. Yeah, you would even wave a fire around the lamp. So the lamp is now the image of Durga. You don't even need a picture of her. You don't even need a statue of her. The lamp can be Durga itself. You can actually go out and purchase a yantra, you can purchase a picture, you can get a murti, all of that's great, but you can even just use a lamp. So that's one thing. The easiest version of this puja is just to offer these five items to the lamp one after another. You don't have to worry about any mantras. You can just put the item in front and say, here, Ma, here is some perfume. And to offer the perfume, I like to spray a flower with the perfume or wipe the essential oil onto a flower and offer a fragrant flower with the perfume. Then she can use that to dab herself maybe with the flower. So you can give the flower, then you can give another flower, you can give the three petal leaf from the rose, you can wave incense clockwise, you can wave light clockwise, You can, of course, ring a bell while you wave the incense and the light, and you can give some food. It's a very simple item offering. And you don't worry about the mantras, just offer them. And anyway, the mantras themselves can be translated to here ma, some fragrance. Om Hring Durge Durga Rakshni Swaha Esha Gandha Jaya Durga Ye Namaha. Oh Durga. Bija mantras aside, the mantra just means, oh Durga, here's some fragrance. Om Hring Durge Durga Rakshni Swaha Etani Sachandana Pushpani Jaya Durga Ye Namaha. Oh mother, here are some fragrant flowers. Like that, you see. So the mantras themselves in Sanskrit translate to these simple statements. Here's this, here's that, etc. So you can mindfully make the offering. This is the simplest version of the puja. You just have a picture of Durga and you offer her these 5 things. That being said though, in our puja class thus far, we've come a long way, right? Together over the last 2 years. I hope that those of you who've been with us from the very beginning of the series, you can see how complex puja can be, how sophisticated, how involved. It doesn't have to be that way though. It can be very simple and very sweet. And I often recommend that when we're getting our toes wet, we're getting started, as many of you are just now getting started in the puja world, don't take too much on too soon. Just go slowly and just learn what's interesting to you and do it slowly, piece by piece. But once you start to get a taste for it, and you will soon because it's so dramatic and you'll get such a powerful result from it, then you'll be motivated to have more pieces to your puja. So thus far in our series, over the course of the last 2 years, we've learned so many purification rites. We learned the achamanam, we learned how to make a sankalpa, we learned how to worship the 7 rivers of India and to invoke it into a vessel on top of a yantra, which is also worshipped. We learned how to purify everything, the flowers, the bell, the food. Like we learned how to make the room holy, evoking a circle, projecting a circle of fire, like all of that stuff. We learned so many preparatory rituals which led up to the Bhuta Shuddhi, which we spent quite a few weeks studying. So just the practice of recognizing that I verily am the divine which I am worshipping. So that's a beautiful and elaborate ritual. It's a kind of antar yoga ritual because it's something you do with your eyes closed inwardly in a meditative state. That's one of the key moments in the puja. One of the most beautiful visualizations of the puja, arguably, where you visualize the chakras and you visualize energy flowing up the chakras and you feel the divine presence in your heart. Then after that, we learned nyasas. And we went through a whole series of nyasas. And after the nyasas, we learned the worship of the sandalwood paste, etc. Now, gang, we're coming into a new section of our puja, the worship of the deities. So having worshipped ourselves, in other words, having recognized ourselves as divine, having worshipped the items, in other words, having recognized the means as divine, now it's time to worship God. So God is the worshipper, God is the worshipped, God is the act of worshipping. But now we're going to worship God. So this is called the puja krama, the sequence of worship. Typically, we start with Surya. So in this puja, after worshipping the sandalwood paste, etc., the next moment in the puja is to make an arghya, a special offering, and we give that to Surya. This represents a little bit the Vedic Sandhya kind of puja, like the Sandhya Vandanam, it's called. This practice of worshipping the sun, especially during twilight. When the sun is setting or when the sun is rising, typically we cup Ganga water in our hands and we pour the Ganga water out to worship the sun, which is a symbol for vitality. So we'll talk about that next week after Navaratri. So now, because of Navaratri, I want to do a more Durga specific class. But actually, in our sequence, the next thing to talk about would be this Surya Arghya Dhanam, it's called. Dhanam means giving, Arghya means special offering, Surya means the sun. So the Surya Arghya Dhanam is the giving of the special offering to Surya. That's the next moment. We'll talk about that next week. Then after this, we worship the Guru. So the Guru is the first person that we worship in the puja because arguably it's through the Guru that we attain to spiritual life. The Guru is the doorway to all of these energies. We wouldn't even know how to do puja without the Guru. So the Guru is very important in our tradition. Of course, the Kaula Sutra begins with there is only one Guru. And so the Guru, such a central piece, to all of this. So in some traditions we worship Ganesh first, but in our lineage we tend to worship Guru first. So having worshipped Guru, the next step then is to worship Ganesh. Then having worshipped Ganesh, the next step is to worship the 5 Vedic gods. Now here, the sequence can change. It might start with Shiva, it might end with Vishnu. Or in our Padati, you'll see it's Shiva, Surya, Vishnu, Durga, and Agni. So that's an interesting sequence. Whereas in the Kālī Mandir, I think they start with Ganesh. Ganesh is one of their 5 Vedic gods, and then they go to Aditya, Surya, and then I think then they go to Narayana, and then they go to I think Shiva, then Durga. I'm not sure, but like everybody has a different sequence for these 5 Vedic gods. For me, Ganesh is not one of the 5. Ganesh and Guru are worshipped before the 5, and the 5 for me are in this order: Shiva, Shiva, Surya, otherwise known as Martanda Bhairava, then Vishnu, And typically with Vishnu, I'll worship Lakshmi and Saraswati and Krishna and Radha also, and Ramachandra and Hanuman, like they all go with Vishnu. And then we can worship Durga. So Durga is the fourth in my sequence, and the fifth in my sequence is Agni. So why is that the sequence? I don't know. That's how the Padati was handed to me. So in our lineage, that was the sequence that we got from our gurus. So I just maintained that sequence as is. But some people make this claim like, oh, if you're going to worship Ma, the most important should be at the end. So Shiva and Durga should be at the end. But I don't really go in for any of these kinds of hierarchies. So I kind of like that we start with Shiva, and I kind of like that we end with Shiva too. At the very end of the puja, the last person you worship is Sadashiva, Shiva in the form of a corpse, after worshipping Kali. Having worshipped Kali and all her Dakinis and Yoginis, in our Padati, we're learning how to worship Kali. But having worshipped all the Avarana Devatas, the Dakinis, Yoginis, Ashtamatrikas, all of that, finally you worship Bhairava, and finally, actually, you worship another form of Shiva, outside of Bhairava even. And this is called Shava Shiva, or Mahapreta Shiva, Shiva the great ghost, or Shiva the corpse. So I like that the kind of after, Guru and Ganesh, we start with Shiva. I like that we end with Shiva. So the sequence is as it is in the Padati for whatever reason, and that's the sequence that I tend to follow. So Durga is the fourth in that sequence. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry. I'm referencing a Padati that we have been studying together for the last 2 years. Padati means ritual manual, basically a sequence of mantras for how to perform a ritual. So in that Padati, Durga is the fourth deity in the Pancha Devatas segment. So all of this we'll return to later. Right now, I just want to focus on that fourth Durga, if you don't mind. That Turiya. I just want to focus on the worship of Durga. Now, when you go to that part of the Padati, and let me show it to you now. So where's the Padati? Here it is. So Kālī Pūjā main. Okay. So here's the Padati. Or this is the beautiful version that our beloved Shanideva has made for us. So let's just go down to the worship of Guru, Ganesh, and other deities. You'll see there's the Surya Argya Danam. Then there's actually this sequence should be switched. This should be first, and then should be this. And then Guru Puja, Ganesh Puja, Shiva Puja, Surya Puja, Narayana Puja. Here it is, Jaya Durga Puja. So I'm going to skip ahead to the Jaya Durga Puja. Now there's a very short version of this. By the way, you guys, the reason why people are very secretive about the Padatis is because Diksha mantras are in there. So you can kind of work out the Diksha mantra, the initiation mantra for a deity by getting access to the Padati of a particular tradition. That's why we're very secretive about our Padati, and you should know that we're going to say the mantra now for academic purposes because we're learning the Padati. But if you want, you have to get this in the context. I mean, ideally you would get this in the context of Diksha, but you're free to practice this now even if you want. There's no problem because you're connecting to the divine. And some people say don't use the Bija mantra, but what I heard from my guru and from our lineage is that anything done with sincerity is worth doing. There's no injunction for such a person. So if you're sincerely approaching the Divine Mother just out of pure love, why should you not have? This is her grace that these mantras are available to us now. So anyway, if you want to get this mantra, of course, Diksha is recommended. It's good that you receive it from a guru in a ritual context. So right now, here is the mantra for the Durga Puja, but I'm just academically offering it. So it's Om Hring Raksha Raksha Hung Pat Jaya Durgaye Namaha. So minus this, I'm just going to highlight this, minus this. This is the mantra for Durga, for this particular part of the puja. Om Hring Raksha Raksha Hung Pat Jaya Durgaye Namaha. So her bija is Hring. Raksha Raksha means protect, protect. Hung and Pat are mantras in the sense that they are masculine and they're weapon mantras. So Hung is the mantra that the goddess uses in the Chandi to eviscerate all the demons. Pat also is a mantra that we use as a weapon mantra. These are Astra mantras. What do you call it? Weapons. So they're very fierce. Raksha Raksha means protect, protect. And even the word Raksha, there's a kind of ferocity to it. So you can feel the energy of the mantra. Now, her name here is Jaya Durga. So Jaya means the victorious Durga. Jaya Durga Ye Namaha. So some people will do their 100 lakh mantras using this. This will be the mantra that they chant with. They will chant 100,000 times Om Hring Raksha Raksha Hung Pat Jaya Durga Ye Namaha. And there's an even longer version that some people use. The one where it's like Daksha Vinashinye Mahaghoraye. There's Koti Yogini. There's a longer mantra also that you can use. But in our community, we tend to go in for a shorter mantra because this will make what would otherwise be a 4-hour day into an 8-hour day if you're chanting this. But this is one mantra that you could in the right context in Diksha be given. You could be given this mantra for Durga. This is a very powerful mantra. Now, the way to make offerings is interestingly, to sandwich the offering, and we'll talk about the whole doom thing later also, we can sandwich the offering between the final clause of the mantra, which is Namaha to Jaya Durga, and the first clause of the mantra, which are all the bijas. So there's in a mantra going to be probably Om, not always, but probably there'll be Om. Then there will be some kind of series of bijas. So here are all the bijas. And then there will be some nama, some name. And the namaha means reverence to the name. So these are the three parts of the mantra, right? Like Om, bijas, and name. So typically the offering is sandwiched before the name part and after the bija part. Not always though. In some padatis you'll see the bijas come after the offering. So you might find Om Ete Ganda Pushpe Hring Raksha Raksha Hung Pat Jaya Durga Ye Namaha. There's also that version. But in our lineage, the way that we learned it is as follows. You say the Om, you say the Bijas, you say what you're offering. So in this case, Ete Ganda Pushpe means here is a fragrant flower. If it was in plural, it would be Etani Gandha Pushpani, to make it into a plural. But whatever, this is the name of the offering and it's sandwiched into the mantra itself. What makes puja puja is doing an act along with the mantra. So it's very powerful to say the mantra. So it could be just this, you guys. It could be as simple as this. You take a red flower, preferably red, but it could be any flower. Yellow also is good. And you can just say Om Hring Raksha Raksha Hung Pat Ete Ganda Pushpe Jaya Durgaya Nama. You just give that flower. That's it. Now in the description of this video, I'll list when you watch it later, if you're reviewing it, or those of you who are just watching it for the first time, Ma willing, I'm going to list the name of the offerings one by one, and you'll see them all over here. So I'll just make this available to you. So this is for fragrance, this is for flower, this is for 3-petal leaf, ideally a vilva. If you have a vilva, you can say this mantra. If you don't have a vilva, you can use this mantra. Vilva patrartha tripatra. Mother, here is a 3-petaled leaf in the place of, or for the purposes of offering a vilva. So that's a nice substitute mantra. Here is for the incense, here is for the fire, here is for food, and then here is for water. But this could also be karana udakam, which means wine. You can offer some wine here. You can do achamani udakam also for her to rinse her mouth. In San Francisco, instead of a tambulam, we didn't have time to make tambulams. That's kind of Indian breath mint. We just gave tic tacs. Mother seemed pleased. So any kind of breath mint, I think, would work here. I've been experimenting with just offering like Tic Tacs or Mentos or whatever, so like that's fine too. Hard to get tambulams, in this part of the world. So you can just offer some kind of breath mint, and that could be tambulam. And finally, this is such a beautiful moment. You offer uh, uh, 2 palmfuls of flowers if you have them, or flower petals. So you just offer a handful of flowers and say Om Hring Durga Durga Rakshani Swaha Eshashana Pushpanjalihi Jaya Durgaya Nama. This is ideally done thrice. So I should have put a times. Actually, wait, I can't do it times 3. There we go. So do this 3 times. Hey, look, I got editing access. Thank you, Shanideva. So you can just chant it 3 times as you do this offering. And while you're doing this, it's nice to actually chant this mantra also. Om Jayanti Mangala Kālī Bhadrakālī Kapālini Durgā Aśvamedha Yajña Swaha Swadha Namostute. This is the famous first, or in some versions, second mantra of the Argala Stotram, the opening of the Chandi. So in a sense, chanting just this is in a sense equivalent to chanting the whole Chandi, because when you chant the first thing of something, you're implying the whole thing. So this is a nice mantra. You can use this as a prayer mantra. And here's another prayer mantra. You can chant this prayer mantra at the end. So after having offered all your items, you can say Om Sarva Mangala Mangalye Shive Sarvartha Sadike Sharanye Triambake Gauri Narayani Namostute. Like that, you can chant that. Om Pradhanam Prasida Tvam Devi Vishvarti Harini Trailokya Vasinami Dye Lokanam Varada Bhava. It's a beautiful mantra. This is from the 4th hymn of the Chandi. Indra Dikrita Devi Stutihi. In chapter 11 of the Chandi, these appear. So very beautiful. So this comes from the Chandi, this part comes from the Chandi, this part comes from the Chandi, all of that. So, this is a very beautiful little puja. Now I want to close. Actually, I'm very much over time now, but I want to close with this mantra. This is such a beautiful mantra. This is called the Dhyanam, the meditation mantra. This is kind of secret. So usually this is given along with the mantra in Diksha. So when you're initiated into the worship of a goddess, you're told how to worship the goddess. You're given the mantra with which to worship her, and you're also given this Dhyanam with which to meditate on her form. So let's go over the Dhyanam if you don't mind right now. It's a beautiful Dhyanam. Now, If you're doing the extended version, so never mind this short version, you just offer one flower. But if you're doing the extended version, you start by chanting the dhyanam. Some of you might be asking, well, where's the nyasa? Because typically before the dhyanam, there's a nyasa. Rang, ring, rung, rang, rong, ra, but like there is a nyasa. But remember, in our padati, we've already done the samanya nyasas. So there might not be any need for a vishesha nyasa. That is to say, we did a general nyasa already in the earlier part of the puja. So we don't need to do a vishesha, special nyasa in this part of the puja. But maybe in some future class, when we start talking about puja in a more sophisticated way, then I will introduce maybe a Vishesha Nyasa for Durga. That's actually where you get the Dung mantra from. Dang Angushtabhyam Namaha, Ding Tarjanibhyam Swaha, Dung Madhyamabhyam Vashat, Dang Anamikabhyam Hung, Dong Kanishtabhyam Baushat, Dah Karadalabhistabhyam Astraya Pat. So like the Bhairava mantra, Brang Bring, Brung Brang, Brong Bra. Like so when you get mantras that gang ging gung gang gonga for Ganesh, Om Gang Ganapataye Namaha, that gang comes from the nyasa actually, ganging gung gang. Similarly, when you see Durga's mantra, sometimes you'll see it with dang or dung. That also comes from this nyasa. So there are definitely traditions that use the dung or dung mantra for Durga. There are also traditions that use the brang mantra for Bhairava. We don't really use those bijas. We prefer our sampradaya bija. We just use this bija, which actually I'm just saying out loud now in an academic context, but usually in the tantric world we don't say bijas out loud, but different lineages will have different bijas. And we argue that, as you can see in the parati, we use haring for Durga. I'm saying that in an academic context. Okay, wait, Viranatha, I'm not sure I understand the question. Why the difference between the flower offering mantra and the others? You know, I'm not sure what you mean. They're all the same, no? Om Hring Rakshaksha Hung Pat, and then you say something, Jai Durga, Ye Namaha. Or do you mean like this one, this Esha Sachanda Pushpanjali? Like this is like actually a special thing. It's like a shower of flowers. Anjali. Anjali means like prayer. So here is my prayer in the form of flowers. So it's like you're showering the flowers, which is actually distinct from the flower offering. So here you give her a nice, beautiful red flower, right? Here you just shower her with flower petals and leaves. So I think you're right, Viranatha. They kind of echo one another. They're both floral offerings, but here it's a little bit more celebratory. You're just like offering handfuls, fistfuls of flowers. So there's like a closing mantra, if you will. So anyway, where was I? So there is a world in which you might use dung or dang, but that's not really our lineage. But it's there. It exists. And my conjecture is it comes from the nyasas. That's where you get those bijas. Because nyasas can sort of generate bijas. For now though, I'm not going to offer a nyasa. If I were to suggest a nyasa, it would be the rang, ring, rung, rang, rong, ra nyasa. Rang, ring, rung, rang, ra, like that. There's a nyasa that you can learn, but we'll talk about it in another puja. If you didn't learn the samanya nyasas, don't worry about it. You can just go straight into the dhyanam. But if you're doing the puja thus far, you would have already learned the what do you call it? The nyasas, and you would have already practiced them. So once you finish all your purifications, you would have done the nyasas. Don't worry about it. You can go straight to the dhyanam. But if you haven't done the nyasas, it's okay. You can still just go straight to the dhyanam. Dhyanam means meditation. So you close your eyes and you try to visualize in your heart what is being described by this mantra. And then having visualized mother in your heart, you can then perform manasa puja, which is where you do the worship in your heart. Now say you have no flowers or no incense or no fire. Say you're living in a household where you can't have an altar. It would be maybe inappropriate for you to have Durga on an altar. Maybe you live in an ultra Christian or ultra Vaishnava household or something like that. And you just like for whatever reason can't have Durga. Don't worry about it, fam. You don't have to do anything after this. You just do the dhyana and you do the whole puja in your heart. But first, to do that manasa puja, you'll need to have something to visualize. And so we like to visualize Durga according to how the scriptures have described her. Because the scriptures are describing how she actually looks as the rishis of old have realized for themselves. So this is how Durga looks according to this mantra. So let's close our puja class now with just a brief introduction to Durga through this mantra. It's a very profound moment. Usually, when we hear the dhyana mantra, it's almost equivalent to installing the deity into the heart. It's a very powerful moment. So let's see. The mantra, we can break it down. Om Hring Kala Brabham Katakshay Rarikula Bhayadham Mauli Badhindu Rekham. So Om Hring, of course, Om is the pranava, Hring is the bija. So we start the dhyana mantra with the pranava and with the bija. Kala means black. Kala means black. Abhra means storm cloud or cloud. Abham, to shine, like bha, to shine. So she shines like a black storm cloud. Remind you of anyone? Meganghim vigatambaram shavashiva rudham trinetram param. See, even in the dhyana, the meditation of Durga, she's visualized as Kali. Her skin is black. We don't need to get into the distinctions now. In the Chandi, we see how Parvati taking a bath creates Ambika and how Ambika furrows her brow and out comes Chamunda, like how Kali and Chamunda are all, you know, like we don't have to get into that discussion now. But the first statement in the Dhyana mantra is her skin is black. Then the next statement, Katakshayar, she glances, like she gives a sidelong glance at her Ari Kula. Kula means group or family. Ari means enemies. So Arikula means a group of foes, namely the demons of the Chandi. So she gives a sidelong glance to those demons, just kind of like looking at them from the corner of her eyes. In other words, she notices her enemies and they piss their pants, which is exactly what the next verse says. The next word says, Bhayadham. She gives them fear. By giving them a sidelong glance, she inspires fear in the hearts of her enemies. So you can see this is a warrior goddess. She gives a side eye, exactly. She gives a side glance and she causes fear, terror for her enemies. Mauli, her crown, Badha means tied to or attached to her crown, is the Indur moon. Rekha means like crescent moon. So Endurekham, the crescent moon is tucked or tied into her crown. So reference to Shiva and her Parvati essence. Shankam, she holds a conch. A reference to Vishnu maybe. Chakram, the discus, again another reference to Vishnu. Kripanam, sword. So Kripanam here means sword, a reference to maybe Nairiti or some other sword wielding deity. Trishikamapi, so trident. So api here means while. So while holding a conch, a discus, a sword, and a trident in her kara, in her hands. Vahantim, so she's holding in her hands these various items. She has three eyes. She's Singaskandhadi Rudham. She's mounted atop the shoulders of a lion. She is Tribhuvanam Akhilam, Tejasa Pura Yantim. She is filling the three worlds with her energy, her brilliance, her radiance. Dhyayet, one should meditate upon Durga in this way. She is verily called, Akya means called, Jaya. Her name is Jaya, the victorious one. She is surrounded, Parivritta here means surrounded by the Tridasha, surrounded by the 30. Who are the 30? The 33 Vedic gods. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. Sevitam Siddhikamahi. She is worshipped by those desiring Siddhi, spiritual powers or spiritual perfection, and pleasure. So those great heroes desiring pleasure and perfection, they should meditate upon Durga in this way. Her name is the victorious one, and she is surrounded by the 30. Her skin is the color of a radiant black storm cloud. She casts a sidelong glance at her enemies, thus inspiring fear in their hearts. In her crown is tucked a beautiful crescent moon, while she holds in her hands a conch, a discus, a sword, and a trident. She has three eyes, and she is mounted atop the shoulders of a lion. She fills the three worlds with her radiance and energy. That's the mantra. How beautiful. And you can chant it or you can just know it. And just by knowing it, you now have something to meditate on. So I hope that will give you something to work with for your Durga Puja. Just very quickly, if you go to the Discord, you'll see in the Discord, I've tried to give a kind of loose translation, but also give you a sense of what the 33 gods are. There are the 8 Vasus, the 12 Adityas, the 11 Rudras, and the 2 Ashvins, the Dioskoroi in the Greek tradition. So these together, 8 plus 12 plus 11 plus 2 should give you like 30 or 33, like that. So these 33 are what's being referenced by the Tridasha Parivritam. And of course, this references that scene in the Chandi when the goddess is being projected out of the various gods and goddesses. Of course, the Shakti of those goddesses have now taken on an embodied form. It's not like the gods are creating her. Rather, she created the gods and then she's coming out of the gods. Anyway, there's a scene in the Chandi where she's worshipped by all the gods. It's there also after she kills Mahishasura. She says, Garja, Garja, Shanamuda, roar, roar, O fool. The very gods will soon be worshipping in this place. So, true enough, when she kills Mahisha, all the gods gather around her and say, Devya Yaya Tatamedam Jagadatma Shaktya Nishesha Deva Gana Shakti Samoha Murtya. Like they're all worshipping her, right? That Shakra Dikrita Devi Stutihi, that beautiful hymn. So when they're worshipping her, you can imagine she's standing surrounded by the 33 Vedic gods, and all the Vedas are paying obeisance to her. So what a beautiful image. So gang, to put this all together now, I'm about 20 minutes over time. We're quite late for the next class, so I'm rushing a little bit. I hope you don't mind. But to put this all together, you can perform Durgā Pūjā. That's quite intense and beautiful. You can, instead of Durgā Puja, just chant 100,000 repetitions by yourself or with others of a particular mantra. We usually recommend the mantra Jai Shri Durga. It's a nice short mantra. You can probably achieve 100,000 repetitions of that. Then thirdly, instead of doing any of this, you can just do this simple puja. And or you can, add this simple puja where you just meditate on Durga's form and then offer her items in your mind's eye. And then you can even do an external worship with these 5 or 10 items if you want. And I'll list the 5 items in the description of this video. And finally, you guys, usually Chandi is like the puja of choice. When it comes to Navaratri, the parayana, the ritual of choice, is just to chant the Chandi. And I don't need to say anything about that now because we've talked about it extensively in other places. And we have a whole chanting syllabus for you. So there's like a sadhana for chanting the Chandi. In fact, there's a kind of puja also that you do in the beginning. You do an achamanam, you take a bath, you wear fresh clothes, you come and sit down, you light a lamp. A lamp should always be lit when you're chanting the Chandi. That's part of the tradition. You do an achamanam, you worship the lamp maybe, you worship the book, like that. So there's a kind of puja there also, but mainly there the sadhana is just reciting the Chandi. Chandi Pata it's called. So that's a sadhana. So look, it's and or. You can do Durga Puja and or chant the mantra and or do external worship and or just chant the Chandi. Or you can do all of these things together. So, it's in your hands really how much you want to immerse yourself over the course of this 9-day period. And it doesn't just have to be during Navaratri. Those of you who love Durga Ma, after all, there's only one Shakti. If you want to worship Ma in the form of Durga, hopefully today's class has given you some tools to do so. You have a Dhyana mantra, which I'll reproduce, Ma willing, in the description of this video. You have a mantra for Japa if you want. Again, it's better to receive this in the context of Diksha, but you can go ahead and chant it now if you want and pray to Ma that sooner or later a guru will have to come anyway and give you that mantra more formally. And then you can do your 5-item worship, and then Ma willing, this would be enough for you to go off of for now. Okay. So that's Durga Puja in a nutshell. Thank you all so much for coming and celebrating Navaratri with us. Let this be an offering to Ma Durga. Let's close with the chant. Om Jaya Twang Devi Chamunde Jaya Bhutapaharini Jaya Sarvagate Devi Kālārātri Namostute Om Yathagnir Dahika Shakti Rama Krishna Sthitahiya Sarva Vidya Swarupam Tam Saradam Pranamamyaham Om Saradam Pranamamyaham Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Shri Jagadhatri Durga Rupinye Saradarpanam Astu. May this be an offering to Sarada Devi, who is Jagadhatri Durga embodied. Om, peace, peace, peace. Ma.